Hello, I'm Stacey Constante. Again, thank you for having me here. Very grateful to be here in this space and share our work together with comfort. I'm the founder of what's called the Nourished Goddess. I've merged allopathic and ancestral medicine to empower women in restoring balance. With about 8 years or so of experience as a nurse, I noticed a lot of the gaps in modern medicine for women's health, and it really inspired me to walk a different path. And so I offer usually one-on-one comprehensive holistic approach. I address root causes while also honoring the women's cyclical rhythms of their menstrual cycle. And so I also advocate for traditional nutrition and indigenous wisdom to break the illusion of modern medicine and inspire self-healing. So that's what I do.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. So for the purpose of today, I'll share a little bit about how we're going to start this. And we're going to start with grounding ourselves. Stacy will lead the meditation. We always lead our spaces with meditation because before coming here, we all have a lot of things that we're working on, we're doing. And I think it'll be just a way of bringing us back into our bodies and being grounded so that we can actually be present, which is one of the main things that does not really happen is the being present, because there's a lot of things being thrown at us, and so Stacey, I'll let you lead, and then we can start the presentation.
Okay, perfect. So this meditation will be pretty quick, but I'll start with everybody to close their eyes, and I'll have you take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And in through your nose and out through your mouth. And one more time. In through your nose and out through your mouth. And I'll have you imagine a dot at the center of your forehead. And I'll have you trace that dot all the way to the back of your head. And when it's there, I'll have you follow it all the way down to the base of your spine. And at the base of your spine, I'll have you imagine a cord coming out, going down through the floors of your home or the facility that you're currently in, going down, 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 penetrating the soil of the earth, going down, 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 passing any roots from the trees, from the plants, passing any stones, any crystals, going down, 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 passing any mycelium fibers, down, down, down until it's just a black space and nothing else. And while we're in this black space, I'll have you take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And in this black space, you'll see a bright light, which is the center of the earth. And we ask Mother Earth if we can wrap this cord around her and that she can take anything that doesn't serve us in this moment. We imagine this murky, dark, paint like pouring down, leaving us, leaving our head, leaving our shoulders, our hands, our arms, our torso, our hips, and into that cord and to Mother Earth, leaving our feet, our legs, our hips, and into that cord to Mother Earth until we're just nothing but an empty vessel. And while we're here, any thoughts, any distractions, any noise, any chatter in our heads, allow it to come in and then allow it to leave to that first cord we created. And we'll take a deep breath in through our nose and out through our mouth. We'll take a deep breath in, breathing out all the emptiness. and breathing out anything that doesn't serve us. And now we'll imagine at that bright light at the center of the earth, another cord being wrapped around, and we ask Mother Earth if she can now provide us with energy that does serve us. And we imagine this cord being wrapped around that light, going up through the soil, running parallel to the first cord we created, up to the dark spaces, past the mycelium fibers, up, past any stones, any crystals, up, past any roots from the plants, from the trees, up, past any other species, until we pierce up through the soil, going up through the homes or the facility we're in, and connecting to the base of our spine, parallel to the first one we created. And we imagine this beautiful green, vibrant energy running through that cord, filling our hips, our legs, our feet, filling our torso, our arms, our hands, and our entire heads. And so we're just beautiful, green, vibrant energy, nothing else. And again, any noise, any distractions, any chatter in our head, any thoughts, allow them to come in and leave through that first cord we created. And while we're here, we'll take a deep breath in through our nose and out through our mouth. Take a deep breath in through our nose, breathing in all the beautiful, green, vibrant energy provided by the earth. And out through our mouth, anything that still doesn't serve us. And now we'll imagine there's an opening at the crown of our head. It's the opening to the divine, the universe, the mystery, creator, God, whatever it is that you believe in. And we ask it to pour in the energy from up above. And we imagine this purple, sparkly, beautiful, vibrant energy pouring onto us like paint, filling our head, our shoulders, our arms, our hands, our torso, our hips, our legs, and our feet until we're just purple, sparkly, vibrant energy and nothing else. And I'll have you take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And in through your nose, breathing in all the beautiful purple sparkly energy from up above. And out through your mouth, anything that still doesn't serve you. And imagine you have all this beautiful purple sparkly energy that was coming from up above and all this beautiful green vibrant energy coming from the earth until you're just half purple sparkly and half green vibrant. And there's no more space within your body and your being, and it pours all around you, filling your aura, filling your space, your entire home that you're in, the facility you're in. And with your eyes closed, if you look to your left, you see all this beautiful paint splatters of beautiful vibrant energy. And if you look to your right, you see the same beautiful, different vibrant energies. And while we're here, we'll take it all in and take a deep breath in, breathing it all in as much as you can. And breathing out anything that's still left that doesn't serve you. And when we're in this space, if you need to move around, if you need to stretch, anything that's stuck in your body that needs to leave, since you're still connected with that first cord, this is the time to do so. And when you feel you're had enough and you're ready to come back, you can close the top of your head, the opening at the top of your head, and say thank you, thank you, thank you to above, and close the base of your spine, and you say thank you to Mother Earth. And we'll rub our hands together, taking in all that beautiful energy that we just received, and grateful for all the energy that no longer served us, that was taken, and recycled into anything that the earth needed. And we'll put our hands over our eyes, and we'll take in one last deep breath, taking it all in, all that beautiful energy, and breathing out anything left that still doesn't serve us. And when you're ready, you can come back.
All right. Thank you so much, Sister Stacey. Thank you very much. I'm trying to share our PowerPoint. Let's see if I have the ability to do so. Share my screen. And it's taking a while. Stacey, would you be able to? I think it's. Do you have sharing? Are you able to share the PowerPoint? Let me see. Okay, share.
Yeah, I can share my screen. You want me to do it?
Share screen. Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm on a different device, and then we can start.
Okay.
So while Stacey is sharing, everyone, like I said, my name is Comfort Dondo, and I didn't introduce myself. I'm the founder of Phumulani, Minnesota African Women Against Violence, and a year ago, I connected with the executive director of NAMI, Minnesota Sue, and I shared with her a vision that we had at our organization because of the things that we were seeing that were coming up in our community around mental health. I shared the vision around doing more outreach and breaking the silence around the stigma with mental health, because we saw a lot of we saw a rise in both domestic violence, but also domestic homicide and suicides, and also substance use. And at that time, I was also becoming a Bush Fellow personally. So I went on a journey that took me to a place where I had time for the first time to heal myself. And so we started doing this work with Phumulani, Phumulani and NAMI as a collaborative. And this is what brings us here. And that's how I met Stacey. I met Stacey on my healing path, and recognizing that in Minnesota, the African immigrants in Minnesota, they're not really seen. They're quite invisible when it comes to issues around mental wellness. And so today we're doing a lunch and learn just to introduce some of the marginalized community members, both here locally in Minnesota, but also hoping we can think outside of Minnesota. So next slide, Stacey. I'll go. But I wanted to, you can go to the back to the other slide. I wanted to share a little bit about this. So how I met Stacey. I always like to start with the personal. I was on my healing journey as a Bush Fellow. That is a picture of me. Those are real lions. They actually have their teeth in, and I had the chance to be able to go back home to Africa after being in Minnesota for about 20 years. I wanted to share that part of the story as one of the objectives to understand why. A lot of immigrants, refugees who move to Minnesota move not by choice. And sometimes someone like myself, I was on a healing journey, and going home was part of that. Why the lions? It was because I live with PTSD, and lions for me resemble the conquering nightmare that I have had since I was a child, of a lion chasing me in my dream. I just thought it was just a nightmare. But then as I started to heal myself and doing therapy, I actually realized that nightmares are a part of something that they call post-traumatic stress disorder. And so to be equipped with that language for myself, that is something that is not equipped for many of the community members that we work with. I decided to do a lion walk so I could actually face my own giants. An inspiration from my first book called Facing the Giants, which I talk a lot about mental wellness. Stacey, you can go to the next slide, please. Actually, I want to go to the objective slide. I think, if you don't mind. So today, we're skipping slides a little bit, but today, I would like to ground us in understanding some of the objectives of why we wanted to share this and why I reached out to Sue. I would love to shed some light on some of the invisible communities that we have in Minnesota. Minnesota houses over 22 different African immigrant communities. And these are just the African immigrant. They also house other immigrants. Right now, at present, we have immigrants coming from Ecuador, which is Stacey's native home, which is where she comes, her ancestors come from. They are coming into Minnesota as political asylees, and we have a lot of um, Ecuadorian asylum seekers here in Minnesota who are fleeing trauma, but they're also being re-traumatized because they're being housed in motels and they don't speak the language. It's just an example. I want to make sure I'm not just focusing on African immigrants, but I will put more a focus on African immigrants because that's the community that I serve and I come from. Um, I hope to shed light today around mental wellness because I want to share a story. I want to share stories of what brings African immigrants in Minnesota. In Minnesota, we have two of the largest African immigrants. The second largest out of Monrovia, Liberia, coming in the Brooklyn Center area. One of the worst forms of civil war that happened. A lot of the Liberians in Minnesota, most of them were child soldiers. They experienced a lot, most of the horrendous things you can think of or even imagine during the Civil War. They are right here with us in Minnesota. The second group I want to touch is the Somali. We have the second largest group out of Mogadishu here in Minnesota. And the Somalis are a little bit spread out, but we have a lot of Somalis in the South Minneapolis area, in the Cedar Riverside, but we also have them throughout Minnesota, including those who are in greater Minnesota, rural Minnesota, who are working in different factories. Somalia also had a civil war. But I also want to say, shedding light on the invisibility of Africans like Francophone African immigrants. African immigrants who speak French, normally they stay in their own circles. We have African immigrants who've come from the DRC, where also there was a war. We have African immigrants from countries like Togo who speak French. And so because English is not their first language, they usually stay in their circles. Next slide, please. One of the things I wanted to take us back is a little bit of a history lesson on the why and how the mental wellness aspect plays out in our community. I wanted to talk a lot about number one, the stigma. I know we talk a lot about mental health, wellness, and stigma even in mainstream, but I want to add on the layer and shed a little bit more light in within the African immigrant community. There's a deeper layer around stigma with mental wellness. I remember growing up as a child, when there was a family member who had a mental health challenge, they were usually pushed outside. They were usually taken outside the home. It was a shameful thing, or they'll be taken to the village. It was almost like they're being hidden versus being supported and given the resources. Mental wellness, mental health, and wellness thereof has always been treated within most of the African regions as a possession, demonic possession. There's a lot of stereotypes. There's a lot of superstitions around what actually causes mental health. Um, there's also misnaming of situations. So I want to share this a little bit. When African immigrants or refugees come to Minnesota, there's labeling. There's immigrants who are coming as international students, like I did as myself. I was mislabeled because I was not only just an international student, I was actually economic and political refugee. I was fleeing a regime that is my government that was not safe for me mentally. But because I was labeled um, an international student or just an immigrant, it completely removed me from accessing some of the resources that our brothers and sisters who have come from war, are able to access. So for a lot of the African immigrants who have moved here from different countries like Kenya, Sudan, other countries where they win the DV lottery, they're coming here not because we say they're seeking greener pastures, but I think we should pause and ask, what are those greener pastures they're seeking? What are they running away from home? So I would like to use and coin a new term that I use, that is, we are all refugees. We are all refugees. It could be war, refugee of war, or we are refugees because we are fleeing dictatorship governments, or we are fleeing we're fleeing economic hardship. And what this does then, it brings us to the place where a lot of the African immigrants in Minnesota, they have experienced one level of trauma or the other. And I want to talk about a diagnosis that I'm very aware of, that I live with, that is post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of the community members from my community, they are living in a space of survival. They are still in survival. A lot of them have to compartmentalize what they've gone through. I've had the privilege of sitting down with a lot of African immigrant women, from nurses to doctors to elected officials. And one thing I can tell you that is parallel, and I'm not labeling the whole community, but I'm hoping after this lunch and learn, we're able to have an overview, understanding the next time you interact with someone from the continent of Africa. We're coming to the USA a lot of the time not by choice. And there's something that happens with that kind of forced migration. It leaves a lot of marks around our mental wellness. And I say in our community, one way or the other, we have been exposed to trauma. And my hope is that we're able to actually support our community members to seek help when they need it. We also the next one I want to talk about is the colonization aspect. Um, Most of us are coming from either British or French colonies. Colonization itself has had an intergenerational impact on on folks in terms of trauma. Colonization has had impact on community members because normally people under colonization are stripped of their identity. They're told narratives about who they are, and that research shows that has impacts on the mental wellness of people. And so I'll move to the next slide, Stacey. Sorry. This afternoon, I was hoping to share a story, a personal story, or personal stories with you, and I'll share my own story because I am an author of a book, and so everything is out there on Amazon. There's really nothing to hide. But I'll share a story of one of my siblings that that lived with a diagnosis of a bipolar disorder. As we were growing up, I heard things. I heard everything from she was demon possessed, she was bewitched. It was not until she moved abroad that she had several episodes where we could no longer, right, we could no longer go to the traditional healer who kept telling us that she was bewitched. It was actually one of the worst episodes where she actually had to have some I think she had to be, they had to use some electricity to her brain. I forgot the name of the term, to revive her. She had been suffering a lot of deep depressive disorders. And then that's when I started learning more about mental health. Where the moment we had her diagnosis and we had her on medication and we had her doing movement work and we had her, the community supporting her, my sibling became a very functional person that today her life is hardly recognizable. My introduction to mental health was through my sibling that I loved dearly, that for over 2 decades in my childhood, we had misdiagnosed her because we had diagnosed her based on what we know culturally, right? And then being able to have some of the terminology given to us helped us with her diagnosis. Um, I'm going to share powerful stories also of some of the community members that I work with, myself included. In 2022, I became a Bush Fellow. The Bush Fellowship, it asks you to focus on yourself. I've been in Minnesota for a little bit over 21 years, and my reflections on my Bush Fellowship was, I'll share the first thing was it took me over a year to be able to learn to focus on myself. What does that mean? The Bush Fellowship asked us to find ways to rest, cultivate joy, and heal, to create a plan That includes things like therapy or movement or travel. Because when I moved to the US, I was 18 and I had a knapsack on my back of trauma, of several traumatic events. I was not even aware of the fact that I was still living in this vicious cycle of survival. I was not aware. I mentioned the lions before. I was not aware why I kept having the recurring nightmares. I was not aware why I was hypervigilant most of the time. I didn't have language to it. I just kept using things like the US is very stressful. There's so much to do. And I just kept misnaming what was happening. I share my personal story about the Bush Fellowship because I am the typical example of the average African immigrant leader, woman, man that you will meet. And a lot of the times, because the society we live in does not allow us for rest, not everybody gets the opportunity to be a Bush Fellow, to sit down and reflect. Can you imagine what folks are going through without that opportunity? It took me a year, literally took me a year to be able to say, I think I'm ready to take the first trip. I think I'm ready to schedule therapy in my weekly schedule. These are some of the things that I wanted to share. And the moment I started doing that, I started being able to regulate myself. I started being able to understand. It has transformed the way I parent. It has transformed the way I show up in my community. But most importantly, it has transformed the way I serve. Being here with all of you and working with healers like Stacey, being here with my team, being able to share healing tools is not something that would have been possible without me getting my own healing and building my own capacity. So I think for me, the personal story I wanted to share was tracing the dots back to my family history, and then back to my community, and healing and finding the culturally relevant healing resources, including the work that Stacey will share with you, has been really life changing. And my personal story is that I hope that I'm able to bring what I've gotten from my fellowship, what I've gotten from working with NAMI and conducting healing circles in my community. I'm hoping to bring it to the larger community of marginalized folks in our community, because a lot of us, like I said, we're coming from a place of trauma. We are coming from a place of survival. And as long as we're still in that place, it's really hard to be the highest level of ourselves in terms of productivity. And next slide, please, Stacey. I think that would be now yours. I think I'm done with my portion. And thank you for letting me share my story. Um, Go ahead, Stacey.
All right, thank you, Comfort. I always like to first remember that there's so many beautiful healing, practical holistic healing exercises that can help us all and help with ancestral healing and traumas, mental health, illness, bringing awareness. But we have to always remember first what to do before we get there. And a lot of us kind of skip over this and go into just straight meditation and like Reiki and all these other cool and fun looking things, but we don't want to do the shadow work. We skip over that. And so it's very important that we first need to re-educate ourselves on the true history that has occurred within our lineage, our ancestors. The example would be colonization, rather than stories we've been told or to telling us to look away. And then we can move on from there. Once we are re-educating ourselves, we know the true story, then we can move from there to acknowledging that this all really did occur and it's still occurring today. And so, and I know it's very hard to take in and potentially process that our ancestors have caused this. But when we shift away from the guilt and shame, because we shouldn't feel guilt and shame for our ancestors, and we shift more into stepping into our power and taking responsibility, as rather than to say this all happened a long time ago, or let's move on, or it's not my fault, or responsibility, since it, I didn't do this, I didn't cause harm. We take more into like, okay, what can I do to not repeat these cycles? As we all have some kind of uh, tie into these ancestral harms. And our ancestors have as well. And so when we break that, we can move forward, take responsibility because it is our responsibility. It's all of our responsibility to build a better humanity. And to birth a better humanity. And so um, it's it's our responsibility to be able to bring this to the light and go into our shadows so we can truly heal those deeper layers instead of just looking into the light and focusing on the light, because that really doesn't help. We're just escaping what truly is occurring within us. And that's how mental health is born, right? We have depression and anxiety because we suppress everything rather than looking into it and really analyzing it and really breaking breaking those patterns. And so really, and then those who want to help, those who want to do the healing or be a healer or get into the healing work or mental health practitioner, any of those kind of things, we need to do it with ourselves first. We need to do that decolonization, that shadow work, all of those breaking down of our stories first, so then we don't project that to others. We ourselves need to step into our own power. We ourselves need to embrace uh, our true selves, all of ourselves, so then we don't project that to our clients, to our patients, to our community, or those that we're trying to lead along the way. And so I think it's very important to shine light on that, that we forget about ourselves as those who are helping or leading the way. And we think, well, we're all good because we're the helpers. It's you, the client or the patient or whatever, who is the one who has a problem. It's like, no, we all do. And when we are able to embrace that and we are able to heal those parts of ourselves, and it's a lifelong healing, we're never going to be truly healed, then we can then truly help others because we see them exactly where they're at. And we're not saying we're better than you because we're truly healed. We're saying, no, let me hold your hand because I understand you. Let's do this together. And that's a community. It's not, I'm ahead of you. It's we're all together and we're all uplifting each other. And that's what we forget. And that's why we have all of this, that those who are suffering with a lot of mental health illness, it plays a big part in that. And so for it's very important also to be able to trace back to our lineage. Um, we can look at, if we don't understand our lineage, we have no clue about it, we can do like ancestry.com, those kind of things. But to truly understand our roots and our culture and embrace it, take it back, it's a part of us, whether we want it to be or not. It's a part of us, and when we do, we like get to step into our entire being instead of running away from it because we're ashamed or anything like that. And that plays a big part, especially for those who are immigrants or those who have different cultures that have not been accepted yet. When we embrace that as a community, then we allow those to step into their power as well. And so whatever we show as ourselves, we will reflect it in others. And so we have to remember that when we're trying to be in this space of help. So a big one too is to be able to come back to listening to our bodies. Um, we have come a long way from not listening to our bodies. We have shown to look away, to suppress everything, keep working, to stay in the flight or fight mode, which has really done a lot of harm to our body and our mental health. Um, our body responds to stress. It's very generic. You know, if you have a deadline, your body's gonna respond the same way as if a tiger's chasing you. And so if you're chronically like this, for example, someone who's in housing, they can't afford to eat, they can't afford their rent, so it would be like a typical immigrant or a typical refugee who has this kind of like mindset, then they're always in chronic stress. And this eventually will lead to something as like insulin resistance. And we never tie those things together. And so we have to remember that managing stress is very important, but also remembering the root of this as well, not just doing something like we always say you got to manage your stress, but no one really knows what that means. And it's very, very particular to each individual. Everybody manages it very differently, and everybody has a different way that resonates with them. And there's different stress management. There's different things that help us healing. Like I mentioned before, we could do deep work with meditation. There's retreats that we can attend, like ancestral plant medicine retreats, to help break down these stories, these illusions. We have a lot of there's a lot of ancestral ceremonies to bring us back to our roots, to remember what truly matters. And then there's, for women particularly, or those who define themselves as women and have uteruses, is to come back to embracing that part of us, come back to healing that part of us, because a lot of these stories, a lot of this wounds are stored in our wombs, in our uteruses as women. And we have a womb and brain connection. And so what our womb feels, our brain tells us. And so it's constantly talking to each other. And so that's what dysregulates a lot of our hormones that also lead to stress responses. And here we go all over again, thinking we're running away from a tiger. And so that's why a lot of conventional medicine doesn't really understand how a woman works. And our womb is so special. And when we truly tap into it and understand our menstrual cycles, we get away from that guilt, that shame, embarrassment, and we embrace it. We take back our power as women. And that's another way for us to use these healing exercises, is to come back to stepping into our power, come back to stepping into our body, our being, and who we truly are, instead of what others have told us. And for call back to action, it would be more so like inviting various communities to collaborate in partnerships, to share their truth in their work, to uplift those communities, to help bring awareness, especially the communities who could connect with these certain individuals. For example, like Comfort and I bring different communities who connect with us and understand us. And we truly understand them and their path and their walk of life and where they come from. So then we can uplift and empower ourselves in this way, because we need more of those speakers from that particular community, because they connect with them in that way. And so, and this is how we can all empower ourselves. So we just have to remember that we're all fighting to stand in our power, all of us, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity. But in order to do so, we have to retrace where it all began and truly understand ourselves and come back to connect with our hearts rather than only our minds. So we do have an ancestral imprint. We all do, every single one of us, of what truly matters, and that's where we are all one. And we have to come back to that. But we have to do the work of dismantling what we have been taught first. And this is where we can break through the division and truly uplift with one another.